After being accepted into a prestigious school, my life took a completely different turn. Each month, my parents only sent me 200 yuan for living expenses, a meager amount that felt out of place in an environment filled with wealthy young men and women. I didn't resist, nor did I expect more. I simply adapted quietly. In my second year, my younger sister also got accepted into the same school. My family didn't hesitate to sell our only house, pouring all the money into buying her all sorts of luxury items, from clothes to accessories, just so she could confidently enter a world that didn't belong to us. On her first day of school, my sister saw me, but instead of understanding my situation, she was angry to see me running errands for the rich kids every day to earn money. She criticized me harshly, saying that our parents worked so hard to raise and educate me, and yet I was doing such shameful things. I just remained silent, glancing at the old wallet in my hand. Inside was a bank card containing over 1,000,000 yuan that I had earned myself in this environment. I calmly replied that if she said so, she should keep her word. She should focus on her studies and not interfere with my work. My younger sister, Sun Yan, appeared in a brand new uniform, a stark contrast to the worn-out clothes I was wearing. Before starting school, my parents had warned me not to publicly acknowledge our sisterly relationship, fearing she would be viewed differently. So when she confidently introduced herself to the class, I just glanced at her and then lowered my head to sleep, as if it had nothing to do with me. In class, no one paid much attention. Sun Yan stood awkwardly for a few seconds before choosing a seat at the front. The classroom suddenly became unusually quiet, everyone's eyes fixed on her. When someone mentioned that seat was associated with someone not to be trifled with, Sun Yan remained unconcerned, even confidently replying that she was there to study, not to be afraid of anyone. But at that moment, Gumo appeared at the classroom door. His gaze swept over the desk where small, delicate items seemed out of place in his demeanor. Sun Yan met his gaze directly, without flinching. The atmosphere tensed, and from that moment, everything began to take an unexpected turn. Tonian maintained her composure, saying that it was a waste for Gumo to sit alone at a two-person desk, and that she just wanted to study in peace. Gumo chuckled coldly, responding sarcastically that someone who talked so much would say they'd stay quiet. The atmosphere in the classroom immediately became heavy. I had to stand up and pull Tonian back to her seat at the back of the class. She resisted, even accusing me of interfering in her affairs. But I knew Gumo's personality better than anyone. He wasn't easy to get along with and disliked being disturbed. Everyone here avoided him, including me. Tonian didn't understand, still confidently believing she could fit in. But then, Gumo coldly ordered all the desks and chairs replaced because someone had soiled the seat. Everyone's eyes turned to her, instantly shattering her initial confidence. The first day of school passed in exhaustion. I almost dozed off the whole time. Tonian mocked me for being lazy, but I just gave a wry smile, saying I'd been working late into the night. At this school, tuition is just the entrance fee. The real cost lies in luxuries like horseback riding, golf, and international skills courses. With the money my parents gave me, I couldn't afford any of them. My family considered my education here a blessing, but they only allowed me to live a minimal life. My younger sister was different. She received a comprehensive education. As for me, I was only taught to endure hardship. But they didn't know that I had found my own way to survive in this environment. Tonian still believed that simply befriending the wealthy could change her life. She didn't understand that in this world, the gap isn't just about money, but also about how people perceive each other. And I, for a long time, chose to stay outside of all those illusions. The conflict between Sun Yan and Gumo quickly escalated. She accidentally used his golf club, then innocently returned it, further exacerbating the misunderstanding. Gumo was ruthless, demanding a large sum of compensation, leaving Sun Yan bewildered. I tried to intervene to calm things down, but Sun Yan misunderstood me, thinking I was hindering her approach to Gumo. She even looked down on me, considering me a commoner who understood nothing of ambition. I remained silent, accustomed to that kind of thinking. Shortly after, a woman named Mrs. Gu approached me, offering a large sum of money to help Gumo improve his relationship with his classmates. I was used to taking on such jobs, from mediating conflicts to handling troubles within the wealthy elite. Each successful attempt earned me enough money to continue pursuing my goals. I accepted, even though I knew Gumo was a difficult case. He's not approachable, nor does he trust others. But I don't care about personal feelings, only about work efficiency. Sun Yan continued to cause trouble, even angering Gumo to the point of threatening to sue. Things gradually spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, I persistently maintained my role as a mediator, trying to minimize conflict. But the more I did, the more I realized that some people can't be changed by reconciliation alone. Gumo wasn't simply someone who needed help. He was the center of a complex system, where every action was misinterpreted or exploited. And I was just the person caught in the middle of that whirlpool, receiving my share of the compensation. Everything exploded when a group of people came to cause trouble for Gumo. In the chaos, I instinctively shielded him from a blow. At that moment, all sounds vanished. I only remembered the 2 million yuan in my head. Then everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, I heard Sun Yan crying and begging for mercy from those people. She said it wasn't intentional, but Gumo coldly declared he would sue to the end. I was too exhausted to care. I just drifted into a daze. When I fully woke up, my family appeared. But instead of asking about me, they were only concerned with contacting Gumo to resolve Sun Yan's troubles. I looked at them, feeling utterly distant. Finally, I confessed everything, saying that I would sue alongside Gumo if necessary. The slap made me understand my place in this family more clearly than ever before. Not a child, but merely a tool to be sacrificed. I laughed, saying that from now on, he didn't need to treat me like his daughter anymore. I cut off all contact and walked out of the hospital room with a strange sense of relief. Outside, Mrs. Gu was waiting, her eyes a mixture of assessment and satisfaction. She understood that I was the type of person who could cooperate but couldn't control. From that moment, everything between me and Gumo changed. It was no longer simply work, nor was there an invisible distance between us. Only choices remained, and each of us had to take responsibility for our own actions. After leaving the hospital, I returned to school as if nothing had happened. Rumors about me and Sun Yan spread quickly, but I no longer had the mental capacity to care. The only things I held on to were my work with Mrs. Gu and my goal of earning enough money for my future. Gumo had also changed. He no longer appeared with the arrogance he once did. His gaze towards me was sometimes strange, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know where to begin. But I didn't ask, nor did I approach him. A clear distance existed between us, something we both understood but neither wanted to name. Sun Yan disappeared from school for a while. I heard her family sent her back to study elsewhere after a series of troubles. Meanwhile, the Su family was in crisis due to debt and related legal problems. Everything that had been built on ambition ultimately collapsed in an unexpected way. I continued my mediation work at school, but as time went on, I realized that every relationship here had its limits. No one truly belonged to anyone. It was all just subtle transactions masked by smiles. One afternoon, Gumo came to see me after school. He stood in the hallway for a long time before finally speaking. "You always do everything for money?" I didn't answer immediately. The wind blew through the long hallway, carrying a little dust from the late afternoon sun. "What else would it be for?" I replied softly. Gumo looked at me, his eyes no longer as cold as before, but with a hint of weariness. "So, if I pay more, will you stay?" I laughed. That question sounded strangely familiar. "Young master, you still don't understand? There are things that money can't buy." He was silent for a long time. For the first time, I saw him not immediately refute me. In the days that followed, Gumo began to appear more frequently in my work. He no longer stood on the sidelines observing, but participated awkwardly, as if trying to learn how to be normal. Once, he accompanied me to mediate a small dispute between two groups of students. Instead of remaining silent as before, he stepped forward and said something that left both sides bewildered, and then successfully mediated the situation in a way no one could understand. I looked at him and couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" He answered very directly, learning not to bother you. I didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. The current Gumo was far different from the one I once knew. But that didn't mean everything between us could change. One evening, while I was organizing work files, he handed me an envelope. The payment. I opened it. It contained more than we had agreed upon. I'm not taking any more. Consider it overtime pay. I looked at him for a long time. What else are you trying to buy? That question made him freeze. A moment of silence passed. Not buying, he said, his voice lower. It's just that I don't know how else to keep you. In that moment, the atmosphere became very quiet. I placed the envelope on the table. Gumo, you don't need to keep anyone. And no one belongs to you just because you want them to. He looked at me, his eyes no longer arrogant as before, but like someone who had learned something too late. Time flew by faster than I expected. Graduation was approaching, and everything was drawing to a close. I continued with my work, maintaining my distance from everyone, including Gumo. But he didn't give up. On the last day before the exams, he stopped me at the school gate. Where are you going after this? To take the college entrance exam. And then? To work. He frowned. I'm not in that plan? You were never in my plans. That answer silenced him for a long time. This time, he didn't argue. He only said one very quiet sentence. Then I'll just squeeze in myself. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. But this time, my steps were a little slower than usual. The college entrance exam ended like a long period. I left the city, embarking on a new journey without anyone to accompany me. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I still remember the gaze of someone who always stood behind me, clumsy, but never truly gone. And I know that some relationships don't end. They just haven't found a way to start over yet. Time flew by faster than I expected. Graduation was approaching, and everything was drawing to a close. I continued with my work, maintaining my distance from everyone, including Gumo. But he didn't give up. On the last day before the exams, he stopped me at the school gate. Where are you going after this? To take the college entrance exam. And then? To work. He frowned. I'm not in that plan? You were never in my plans. That answer silenced him for a long time. This time, he didn't argue. He only said one very quiet sentence. Then I'll just squeeze in myself. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. But this time, my steps were a little slower than usual. The college entrance exam ended like a long period. I left the city, embarking on a new journey without anyone to accompany me. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I still remember the gaze of someone who always stood behind me, clumsy, but never truly gone. And I know that some relationships don't end. They just haven't found a way to start over yet. Why do you want to understand me? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. The early autumn breeze swept through the hallway, carrying a very slight chill. To know why you always stand alone. I laughed, but this time it was a different kind of laughter. Gumo, you still don't understand. I stand alone because it's my choice. He looked at me for a long time. So what if I stand with you this time? In the days that followed, Gumo truly appeared in my college life. Not ostentatious, not attention-grabbing, but always there. He learned how to work part-time, learned how to live like a normal person, and even began to learn how to wait without forcing anything. I still kept my distance, but that distance was no longer as sharp as before. Once I asked him, "Aren't you tired?" He was taking notes, not looking up. "I am tired. Then why bother?" He stopped writing. "Because if I don't try, I'll just go back to where I started, and you'll disappear again." I said nothing. For the first time, I realized there was someone who didn't see me as a transaction, nor as a task to be completed, but as someone who was genuinely afraid of losing me. Late one evening, as I was about to leave the study room, Gumo stopped me at the door. "Last time you said that feelings can't be bought with money." "Yes." He nodded, as if he had thought about it for a long time. "So if I don't buy them anymore and only use my time, use myself, is there a chance? I looked at him. The arrogance and absolute confidence of the first time we met were gone. Only a person trying to learn how to enter another person's world remained. Gumo, feelings aren't about chance or not. Then what are they? I was silent for a long time. It's about whether you want them or not. He stood there, speechless for a long time. Then he nodded. I understand. But this time, I wasn't sure he truly understood. All I know is that from that day on, Gumo stopped asking me those coercive questions. He just stayed, very quietly. Time at university flew by so quickly, so fast that I almost didn't realize Gumo's presence in my life had become a habit. He was no longer the arrogant young master he once was, nor the one who only knew how to use money and power to impose his will. But no matter how much he changed, I still maintained a very clear boundary. We weren't lovers. Nor were we close friends. We were just two people existing in an unnamed orbit. Until that event happened. A major school project needed a group of students to represent the school in an inter-school competition. I was chosen, and what I least expected was that Gumo was also on the list. From the start, the atmosphere between the groups was tense. But what made things spiral out of control wasn't the competition itself, but a presentation where internal information was leaked, leading to suspicions of cheating within my group. The pressure mounted, and all eyes turned towards me. Some said I used connections. Others said I had done shady things before. The rumors spread faster than I expected. I didn't explain, because I knew explaining in situations like this wouldn't do any good. But Gumo was different. He stood up right in the middle of the meeting room, his voice eerily calm. If she needed to cheat, then I'm the one who doesn't deserve to be here. The room fell silent. No one understood what he was saying. He looked directly at the judging panel. I was the final checker for all the project data. If there are any errors, it's my fault. I looked at him. For the first time, not as an outsider observing, but as someone being drawn into the center of attention. After that meeting, all misunderstandings were cleared up. But what I couldn't ignore was Gumo's gaze as he walked out of the meeting room. It was no longer a look trying to prove something. Instead, it was a look that seemed to have made a very important decision. That night, he stopped me in the schoolyard. How much longer are you going to stand outside? I was a little tired and didn't want to answer. Stand outside what? He stepped closer, this time not keeping his distance as before. Stand outside me. I sighed softly. Gumo, I've already said it. We don't have that kind of relationship. He was silent for a long time. Then he said something very softly. So what do I have to do to be considered a relationship? I looked at him. This time, I didn't avoid his gaze anymore. Don't you understand yet? It's not about how much you do, but whether I want it or not. His eyes darkened. So what if I wait? I shook my head. Don't wait, because there will be no result. After saying that, I turned and left. But this time, I no longer heard the sound of footsteps chasing me from behind. Only the cold night wind. A week later, Gumo disappeared from school. Not a single message, not a single news. I thought he had finally given up. But just as I was preparing to graduate, Mrs. Gu came to see me. She placed a stack of documents on the table. Girl, you've won. I frowned. What do you mean? She smiled, but this time it wasn't the challenging smile she'd had before. Mo has voluntarily withdrawn from all family obligations. He said he wants to try living as a completely normal person, completely unrelated to the Gu family. I remained silent. She looked at me for a long time before continuing. But he left a message. I didn't ask, but she still spoke. If you don't need me, I'll learn to become someone you can't refuse. I put the documents down. There was no clear emotion in my heart, just a strange emptiness. A month after graduation, I left school. There was no farewell party, no one to see me off, just a train ticket and a clear plan for the future. But as soon as I stepped out of the station, a familiar voice rang out behind me. You still haven't answered my last question. I turned around. Gumo was standing there. No more suits, no more luxury cars, no more overwhelming aura of a young master. Just an ordinary person. He looked at me. Now I have nothing left. No family, no money, no power. Only myself. He paused for a moment. Is that enough to qualify me to be with you? I looked at him for a long time. For the first time, it wasn't about calculations, not about weighing benefits. Just a person standing before me who had truly stepped out of his old world. I sighed softly. Gumal? Yes. I don't need you to be perfect. He was silent. Nor do I need you to change for me. I looked him straight in the eyes. But if you're standing here, don't turn back. At that moment, he smiled. A very slight smile, but genuine. I won't turn back. The wind blew across the platform. For the first time, we stood side by side without any distance to measure. No more transactions. No more compensation. Only one simple choice remained. Stay or leave. And this time, neither of us needed any more conditions. That night, after everyone had left the dinner table, the house fell into an eerie silence. But it was no longer the same as before. It was heavy, thick, as if something had been stripped from its shell. I stood by the window, watching the light from the living room. Shuhan was still sitting there, still with that gentle smile as if nothing had happened. But for the first time, I no longer saw that artificial perfection. My father came out, about to say something, then fell silent. My mother simply placed her glass of water on the table, her gaze no longer avoiding mine. And I understood one thing. No one in this house was in their old position anymore. The next day, Shuhan left, without fanfare or drama, just a small suitcase and a polite farewell. But when the door closed, the whole house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Things wouldn't go back to how they were before, but at least the truth is no longer hidden. And this story isn't the end of one person's arrival, but the beginning of everyone learning to look at themselves. After Shuhan left, the house remained silent for a few more days. A silence that was no longer peaceful, but the lingering echo of something that had just been exposed. My father started coming home earlier. No more urgent late-night calls. But he also spoke less than before, as if every word had to be carefully considered from the beginning. My mother, however, changed most noticeably. She no longer spent all day in the kitchen, nor did she try to please anyone with perfect meals. Once I saw her sitting alone in the living room, just staring out the window, doing nothing. I thought things would gradually return to normal, but one afternoon, while I was tidying my room, my mother came in and placed a stack of files on the table. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice wasn't shaky, nor was it soft, just strangely calm. The files contained things I never expected. Decisions and choices made long before Shuhan appeared, and things I had never known about this family. I looked up at my mother. For the first time, I realized Shuhan wasn't the reason everything was falling apart. She was just the one who pulled back the veil faster than usual. It started to rain outside, and this time, none of us wanted to pretend we weren't getting wet. The rain continued until evening, tapping steadily on the tin roof like the heartbeat of a house trying to remain calm. I opened the file again, each page feeling heavier with each read. Names, signatures, decisions concerning property, transfers, and something I didn't want to admit. Some things in this family had been arranged long ago, not starting with Shuhan. My mother sat opposite me, neither pressuring nor explaining further. She was simply waiting for me to understand. "Why now?" I asked. My mother was silent for a long time before saying, "Because you were young before, and because I also thought silence would be better." That statement offered no justification. It was like a belated admission. The door creaked softly. My father was home. He stood in the doorway, his clothes soaking wet without an umbrella. Seeing us sitting there, he wasn't surprised. Perhaps he had anticipated this day would come. "Have you seen it?" he asked me. I nodded. The atmosphere in the room became heavy. No one raised their voice. No one immediately blamed anyone. Just three people sitting in a room where, for the first time, there was no longer any room to hide. Then my father placed a key on the table. "There are things it's time for you to decide for yourself," he said. I stared at the key for a long time. It didn't just open a door. It was like it was opening the rest of the story, a part I had never been allowed to touch before. Outside, the rain began to subside. But in this house, everything was just beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. The key lay on my desk, cold and heavy, an unmistakable reminder. I tried to guess what it opened: a room, a safe, or some place this family had deliberately avoided mentioning for years. The next morning, I took the key and left the house. No one asked me where I was going. Perhaps everyone knew, or perhaps everyone was afraid to ask. I walked down a few familiar streets, then turned into an old neighborhood deeper in the city. It was unremarkable, just faded walls and a locked iron gate. I tried the key on the padlock. Click! A small sound, but enough to make my heart skip a beat. The door opened, revealing a dark space and the smell of old paper. Inside was a small room, filled with filing cabinets, books, and a dusty desk. I stepped inside. On the table lay an envelope, as if someone had known I would be coming. My name was written on it. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside wasn't a lengthy explanation, but a single piece of paper. There are truths that aren't spoken to conceal them, but to protect them. But at some point, silence is no longer an option. I stood still for a long time. Outside, light streamed through the dusty window, falling on stacks of files as if marking layers of buried past. And I understood the most important thing from the beginning. This story doesn't end with knowing the truth. It begins with what I will do with it. I returned to my old room one last time on a rainless afternoon. Light streamed through the dusty window pane, falling on the stacks of files as if everything here had been waiting for an ending for a very long time. I didn't carry as many thoughts as when I first entered, only silence. Each file, each name, each signature, all arranged into a complex network of the past. And if I delved any deeper, I knew I would never return to my old life. But then I stopped at the last line of paper. Not a bigger secret, not another shock. Just a short note written in my father's familiar handwriting. That's enough. I sat there for a long time. For the first time, I understood that some truths aren't meant to be delved into endlessly, but to be stopped at the right moment. I left the room, locked the door, and left the key on the table just as it had been given to me. No one asked about the room again. No one mentioned Shu Han again. The house remained, the meals, the conversations, the seemingly unchanged ordinary days. But we all knew. Things had changed. Not because the truth had disappeared, but because, in the end, we chose not to let it continue to tear us apart. And that was the first and last time I felt this story truly ended.